last 10 years, last 20 years, we've done all kinds of printing. So I think, Bitcoin would be a safer hedge for the government. And it would make them more responsible because everything they would want to do as far as with their money, they would have to do it on chain. So, a lot more information would be out there versus them, coming up with these crazy like financial plans and then just printing like their stimulus package, like just coming up with stuff like that and printing trillions of dollars out of thin air and then not really having a way to bring it back. So I guess that would be my take on it.
Do you think in the end then, like, would that maybe be the solution, is by having crypto, it's making governments more kind of stand more out in the open as to what they're doing when it comes to this printing of money and different things like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what blockchain technology adds, is this that open ledger, right? Like that gives you like all your transactions are there on chain. So like it just gives you this open ledger that everybody can see. And it's pretty hard to, cover it up, right? So I mean, I think, it makes everybody a little bit more responsible. Like anytime, even if you were to make a bad trade decision, right? You could always go back to BSC scan and find that bad trade decision and use it as like a way to be like, yeah, I remember I did that, right? Like no matter how bad you want to forget it, the blockchain won't. It'll always be on chain for you.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Here, I'm going to add up Pulley and Wafercoin if they're available. You guys are more than welcome to come up.
What's up, everybody?
Hey,
What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm just listening to you talk about the government like they're not just printing money at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
I know, right? I was like, that's why I was a little confused. I was like, I don't know how we're gonna like. It'll be hard for us to like, it's almost like I always say like we can't do cryptocurrency without the government like help in the sense of we need something to tie our value to, right? Like it has to be something monetary for us to until crypto really gets all the way to the forefront. But I think that crypto will still exist without the government coming in and helping out in a sense, if that makes any sense on the same note.
What this is actually going to turn into real quick, if I let it, is like this deeply philosophical conversation about value creation, because you're saying that we need the government to keep money rolling so people will have something to trade. But the reality is, if everyone suddenly believed that, I don't know, Dogecoin was an acceptable store of value, then it would be worth more than the US dollar because the dollar would instantaneously be valueless. You're talking about value creation. So you could have a whole community that if the whole community believed in crypto, you would get paid in crypto and trade in crypto, and it would have intrinsic value. We'd have to talk about how the dollar is no longer backed by gold and how, that used to be this. There's always a standard for something. This gets super philosophical and deep. It's a great conversation.
That's how I thought about it too, is this is a great conversation for everybody to kind of say their piece. I think it's something that will definitely create a big conversation today between us all, and I'm just kind of curious as to what to think. Like, if you're looking at staking, for instance, or some of the higher interest rates that people are able to get, could you imagine if the government harnessed on to one of those higher interest rate things to actually look at recovering some of the debt or doing something like that, right?
For me, guys, I mean, and good morning, everyone. This topic is probably one of my most fun to talk about, because when you really look at the world stage, right? I firmly believe crypto was started by the U.S. government. That's my belief, to destabilize nations, right? So when you look at what the dollar's backed by now, it's the petro, right? So it's backed by oil. That's what gives our dollar value. So the only issue is right now is as we continue to print money, obviously, like, if you increase your supply without increasing, the value behind it, your stuff becomes more worthless. So how we can fight inflation is demand our country do a burn. Take back all that money and throw it in a furnace.
Wafer, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm on a train. I have a question. I like the way you're going, but if, following that logic, crypto is set up by the U.S. government, and it's made to destabilize
Oh, did we lose you?
go out there and be like, we can all go out there and we can say, oh yeah, the euro is backed by whatever, but in reality, let's face it, the euro is backed by the USD, right? Because we are directly dependent on how much his government decides to print today or tomorrow. And if the U.S. government says, we're going to print a couple million more, yeah, inflation will occur, but it's not going to affect them because they'll just print more, right? The government will profit. They can do whatever the hell they want, but the people will suffer because inflation. Do you see where I'm heading?
Yeah, the only thing is more dollars are chasing less goods. That's what causes inflation, right?
Yeah, of course. Meant that, like, the U.S. government, for example, needs money for something, but that they don't have. They can just print more, and yeah, it will inflate, but say it inflates by 10% more, pay it before the inflation goes up again, and then they can still do whatever the hell they want. No backing by petrol, no backing by the U.S., no backing by gold, no backing by anything.
So I don't know if you're aware, but usually when we get in these situations, America will enter a conflict.
Right.
It happened during the Great Depression, World War II, Korean War, the 1970s.
And you get civil wars.
Yep. So, I mean, anytime there's a financial issue, we always go to war. And that's how we usually solve inflation, is by decimating another country.
Or overthrowing the government.
Yeah, I mean, it happened in Libya, it happened in Kuwait, it happened all over the Middle East when they started talking about going back to the gold standard. So what happened around that time when they talked about going to the gold standard, I mean, Bitcoin magically appeared, right? And then some of these other tokens started to appear. So I just think it's kind of convenient that around the same time all this was happening, Bitcoin drops, right? And I've shared my view on Bitcoin numerous times where I believe it was a think tank by the CIA or the government. To have one man say that they coded that entire thing, it just doesn't seem possible.
Right, but have you looked through the Bitcoin white paper and the process and the protocol?
Yeah, that's what leads me to believe it had to have been a think tank.
Right, but even if it was a collection of people, would you argue that there is a way to exploit Bitcoin, or would you argue that the way that it is deployed into the wild right now, there is no more control from the U.S. government over the asset?
That's true.
Well, I mean, that's a catch-22, right? In theory, the government could shut down the internet, stopping Bitcoin. So, I mean, there's different things the government technically could do.
Isn't fiat their system of control every time they create some sort of socio-economic system that allows them to buy the dip?
Right, but how would they, hypothetically speaking, destabilize BTC?
By destabilizing USD, I would think.
Right, but then instead of destabilizing other countries, destabilizing crypto, they're destabilizing themselves. They're setting themselves up for a civil war and a government overthrow, right?
Absolutely.
I don't think that's what they want.
And that's not what they want, but that's what they're willing to do. That's the dangerous gambit that you're willing to play in a high-stakes game.
Right, fair, but as a political leader, I would feel like their number one priority is to stay in power, and the number two priority is to do whatever the fuck they want, right?
Fear is the number one driver to keep people in power. If we're always in a constant state of fear, you have the exact same leaders, which is why we've had the same 20, 30, big leaders, if you will, in our country that have done nothing for anybody but drive fear and propaganda. So fear is the mechanism, right? And money is the tool.
I feel you. I suppose that's the reason the U.S. has been able to keep all of its 50 states together, is solely because the past 200 years of its existence, only like 4 years or something haven't been war, right? They've always been at war, whether that's been Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, or the Mexicans, right? Or the Brits, initially.
Yeah, and in America, I feel like it's the proudest tradition we have. It's instilled in us from day one, right? And when you look at the reality, in the 1970s and around the time of Vietnam, that's when people started waking up to like the machine and the farce that happens behind war, and maybe we're not being told everything. So, obviously there's cracks in the system, if you will, but that system is what's kept America on top for a very long time. So once you destabilize that ideology, and it is an ideology war, don't get me wrong. When you're looking around the United States and they're saying hate your country, don't like this, don't support your, there's a lot of ass backwards teachings right now that are detrimental to a country or a nation staying a nation.
Do you?
So what would you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just trying to think of this. Do you think this is potentially a way out of, like, I'm not saying that US doesn't want to be in power. They definitely want to continue to be in power towards the top of it. But do you think crypto gives the ability to more level out the market when it comes to all countries versus just the US? No, you guys have
either way, in order for you to spend it right now, you have to convert it to some sort of fiat, right? Unless you're on somewhere that takes crypto or a bank that does crypto, but that's few far and in between at this point. So, I mean, one way or another, you have to go back to fiat in a lot of cases just to be able to use what you've earned or traded, in which case the government wants their taste.
And that's that was my argument earlier when I was like, that's where we tie our value back to. Like, no matter what, we still have to, like, if I go out today,
that already accepts currency. Right.
Yeah. Can y'all hear me? Am I here?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's exactly what I was saying. It's just like that ideology is like, if I go out and make $1 million this week in crypto, and I want to show the value of my crypto, I have to go back to an exchange that and go to fiat, and then I'm
right.
Like, if I let it stay there for a year, 2 years, it'll be the same number, right? But it won't be the same value. So I think when you think about it, would crypto be a safer hedge? In a way, but at the same time, like you guys are saying, it's kind of hard to say what Bitcoin's worth if it's not tied to some type of fiat. Like, it's just, we can't. I don't like. It's kind of it's like a catch-22, like you're saying. It's no matter how you think about it.
Bitcoin's value is tied to data, right? Like, that's really at the end of the day what's tied to its value. Like, any of these other data mining companies, if you will. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is one of those things where it's like, yeah, we'd all love to be crypto, but the reality is the people that own those off ramps and the people that own the banking system and mess with your mortgages and your taxes is still the government, right? So, I mean, at the end of the day, you can make as much money as you want in crypto. As soon as you go take it off that on ramp, Uncle Sam is standing there with his hand out.
Yep. Unless you're just going to a smaller country with less regulation.
And need I remind you, the liquidity pool is, for all these assets, is money that's already out there. So anytime it goes to the chain, it's, technically it's taken out of the circulation of people spending it, but once it's converted back, it's still going to be dollars, right? Or it's associated with dollars because, again, it's pegged to the petrodollar system. So, I mean, until something can rival or get the backing of an entity that can stand toe-to-toe with some of these bigger entities such as the U.S. government or these lobbying places, I mean, we're still going to be, no matter the market cap, we'll still be kind of at the kiddie table, if you will.
Yeah, that's kind of fair to say, man. Like, it's so tough to think about because, like, I think crypto, in a way, I think Bitcoin, like, bonds haven't been successful over the last, like, 10 years, right? So, like, trading bonds. So I think, crypto will be, like, it'll soak up some of that money from bonds and people not investing there. But how much, like you said, how much will it? Because at the same time, the proof of war concept has always worked for the dollar. Like you said, anytime there's something going wrong, let's just go decimate another country. Let's go steal oil. Let's go do whatever we got to do to keep our currency in power. So do you think like data will eventually replace that need for war or that kind of need to conflict to decimate other countries?
No, because data is still a scarce thing, right? If people aren't creating data on a regular basis, if there isn't data flooding in, it's still a commodity at that point, right? So, if they do switch to a data platform or something relating to data, then there's a good chance they'll start trying to skew data or downing other systems in a cyber warfare capacity, because people forget warfare is on different planes now, right? It's mental, it's digital, and it's physical. So there's multiple layers to how warfare can be played out. And right now, as you guys all know, Russia and China and these other adversaries of our nation are constantly trying to hack us for data, right? So we're already at war for data. I think the landscape would just change on how these conflicts play out.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, my connection died. I just want to quickly hop back in, throw out a quick thank you for the good convo. Amsterdam. I'm back at the conference now, so I got to head off. But it was good talking to you. Catch you guys next time. Take care.
All right,
Thanks.
brother. Enjoy.
It was cool seeing you come in here. I got excited when I saw your name, man. It's been a while since I talked to you. See you next time.
Later, buddy.
What a good day to be at. All right, brother. Have a good one. It's a good day to be in Amsterdam, huh? 420 ETH conference. ETH Amsterdam. I'm jealous.
I'd forget about the conference.
What conference?
Exactly. If somebody be like, "There's a conference," and I'd be like, "Shit, I got to get my ticket," and then I'd find my lanyard on my neck. And like, it'd be a great day. It'd be a great day. You know what, dude? I'd end up on layer 3.
That's hilarious. I'd be talking about buying my ticket and have my lanyard on my neck already.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh man, good times, man. That is some good points though, man. It's always funny how like when we get into the nick of it. I actually haven't thought about the ideology of Bitcoin being created by the government. I thought about the CIA one time, right? But then I was thinking about which government, right? Because I mean, don't you think the government that created it would want the most benefit from it? And I don't think that America's seen the most benefit from Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, it's not about benefiting any country, right? It's about creating a currency that is uncontrollable, right? So when you think about weapons, right? If you have a virus and you send the virus out into the world and the virus grows and it's uncontrollable and no one can solve it, the virus continues to stay, right? When you look at financial markets, people have been trying to design a sort of, quote, virus, if you will, that'll outpace or even outlast the current fiat ideology. So, I mean, Bitcoin was the perfect solution to that problem, right? Like, oh, it's unhackable. It's on this thing we call the blockchain, and then it seems it gives itself the appearance of being something that can be, even utilized in everyday life. Like, if you start using like NFT document management and all these other systems, well, if you start to centralize that all on, and again, it does become centralization once everyone starts to use it, right? I think once you get the centralization towards, using these things for other uses, you'll start seeing that control come more and more into play. And that's the catch-22, right? Of when people mass adopt, there's always somebody that's going to somewhat control. Like Bitcoin, people say you can't centralize it. Well, if you own 51% of the mining rigs, you've centralized, right? Or if you own X amount of a system, then you can centralize.
You know what's scary about that too is the governments are the ones that are working on quantum computing. And from what I understand, you don't need to worry about quantum computing hacking blockchain. What you need to worry about is actual quantum computing using it for mining, for instance, like Bitcoin. It will be something that could really affect Bitcoin in the wrong way, I think.
Bitcoin would be the least of our worries, right? Quantum computing can destroy firewalls built by governments over decades in seconds. So what we're talking about is if you can reach that breakthrough, you're talking about there is no secrets anymore, right? Like from certain entities. So, I mean, personally, I think the idea of quantum computing is very cool and also dangerous. Like, I'm split on it.
Yeah. And the hard part is we're not going to be able to stop it anymore either. It's going to continue on, but it's about protecting ourselves though too. And I think like they're talking about blockchain and like quantum proofing blockchain and all this stuff, which is potentially possible. But I'm just curious what direction it's going to head in. Oh, excuse me. Oh.
If history has taught us anything, it's that it usually will first. Most technologies that are adopted are usually used by the people, right, for the purpose, and then by governments for evil. I swear, that's usually how it goes down.
Yeah. I'm just so like, I think governments are at this point now where they have to create a huge change in the environment right now because people don't believe in the old ways anymore. It's kind of like we're stuck in this Roman archaic way of running things. Like when it comes to politics and stuff, it's been around since Roman times, and now we got to go through the next evolution of what a government is really. And I'm hoping that they're looking at it seriously, or we get younger blood in. to look at it seriously as to, okay, this is an old system that's obviously not working now. What can we do to change it or make it better?
But I think a lot of their money comes from the way they run this whole system. You got all the lobbyists that throw their money at these people left and right, right? And then I think, you got certain families that's in power. I don't think it's far fetched that these people want to give up their power. Like it's just like you guys were saying earlier, nobody wants to give up their power, right? Like people just don't want to give up the power. They rather scare the hell out of you and scare you to death for the rest of your life than to give up any control of power.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Vibin. Nazi Germany did exactly what I'm talking about, fear and control, which created the Third Reich in its entirety. They were willing to execute people en masse, right? So, I mean, it's not like history hasn't showed us what tyrants and people who are desperate would do to stay in power. And it's all across all civilizations over time, right? Like, there's always a power struggle for new ideology and new this, that, and the other. But the reality is what comes next could be much worse.
That is the scary part. I mean, and that's the thing. We don't know where this thing's going to head to. I mean, it's almost funny to think about. I think overall, when I think about cryptos, I mean, play in it. I think crypto is I want to say it's for the people. Like I think like you said, it could be for the people and let the people use it first, and then the government can take it over and for evil, right? So, but I definitely want to always think, in the long run, I think the digital assets will play out to do well. I think fiat will always be here in a sense. I don't think the actual paper system will still be here, in maybe the next 20 years. But yeah, I think the government is far fetched from wanting to give up any power in any due time. I mean, any amount of respectable time.
I hope in the end that we see some difference. Like, I know I'm being pessimistic here, but I think we got to see both sides of the coin. There is somebody that made me really wake up to what's going on, and this was just a couple months ago, because I was really much into the different thinking and stuff, and this Kurt Tanner is his name, was breaking into he was the one that released all the information on the Freedom Convoy in Canada, and then now he was hacking into Russia the last little while. He's one of the founders of Anonymous, and he's making himself very vocal and very upfront for everybody to see what he's doing. But one of the things he said was this whole idea of New World Order and all this stuff is garbage. And this guy dives deep into crypto. Like, he's like, but he doesn't deny that the internet was kind of like almost an experiment for the US government in the end, is what he said, is like kind of almost like a mind control thing for the government, or giving the ability to do things that they want to do. But he said, as for like the idea of like New World Order and all this other stuff, he is like, it's not true. Like, some people are going too far, but he is like, governments aren't perfect though either. He is like, Russia is bad, but so is Ukraine, but Russia is worse than Ukraine, so they went after Russia versus Ukraine. But he was like, both sides are bad. It doesn't matter what side you look at. And it's the same with the States. He's not a friendly person when it comes to state or Canada, but he's like, you got to get your head out of the conspiracy theories of this New World Order and whatever. It's all, governments are all messed up and they all have issues. And hopefully it's people like us that are trying to push for integration of cryptocurrency and trying to stop some of the regulation or like heavy taxes that I think could potentially make a difference in the end. Go ahead, Pulley.
So, off the heels of all the things you just described about corruption running amok in basically any centralized source of power, like a government or a council, city council, town council, federal government, doesn't matter. What crypto brings to the table is essentially transparency. right? Blockchain transparency, and we may not be able to solve all of the world's problems with crypto because I am not an optimistic person by nature. I'm very skeptical and cynical, and I'm very hard to earn trust and stuff like that. So I'm not one of those people that thinks crypto is utopia and it's going to be sunshine and rainbows out my ass if everyone buys Bitcoin. Even if we reach 100% adoption, I don't think it's going to solve anything. I think it's going to be an interesting step into a whole new set of problems. But what you're describing with all that corruption would be like right now, I'll just pick a topic that's on everybody's minds. Everybody was chasing these Russian oligarchs around, worried about what they were doing to shuffle their money around. And if this was 20 years ago or 40 years ago, when this happened in Venezuela and Libya and all these other countries, we were literally finding places in Saudi Arabia, or not Saudi Arabia, in Iraq, where Saddam Hussein had stashed literally rooms full of cash, right? And we just walked in like, holy shit, there's rooms full of cash here. With the blockchain, you would have seen that. It would have moved. You would have known where it went, wallet to wallet. You would have traced it. And that transparency in all these situations, whether it's corrupt money going to a super PAC from donors that want to find a candidate that fits their goals, or whether it's money going from an oligarch to an assassin to take out a counterpart of theirs that they don't like. All of this sunshine transparency that the blockchain affords you disappears. And that's why when we get in arguments where people say that crypto is like for criminals and stuff like that, my senses go crazy because they act like fiat isn't. But crypto at least is more traceable. So to the end of all the corruption you're describing, I would submit to you that the transparency is the most valuable thing.
100%.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I think the dollar is the most decentralized thing that we have, right? Like, you can't track the dollar.
It's pretty degen for sure. The dollar
definitely is. I mean, not until we started having those big series of bank heists did they even start really making it traceable in a sense, right? And start tracking the numbers. Before that, it was just they didn't give a fuck what those serial numbers were. They just did that, so they could kind of stay in some form of order.
That's also why they started insuring it. The banknotes that are labeled also carry a value to the insurance that insures them through the FDIC.
Is that in their value of what like the actual paper, or is it actually the value behind the actual dollar?
So like the value behind the dollar is backed by the petroleum, right? So oil backs the dollar. But one of the reasons why people obviously like fiat and the banking is because it'll insure your asset up to $250,000 in the event of a loss. So, I mean, I can see why people stay at the bank if there's some form of security, but I mean, at the end of the day, like Pulse was just saying, I mean, I don't see it being sunshines and rainbows because the blockchain is only transparent up to a degree, right? Unless everyone lets everyone know about all their wallets and what they're holding, and you know what I mean? Like, you have to broadcast that information, right?
No.
Otherwise, it's transparent. Like, yeah, I can see it on the block, but I have no clue who did it.
Nah, that's facts. Super facts. So you think the government already got a wallet? A few wallets?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, bro, it would be absolutely outrageous if the government did not participate at any end of this over the last 13 or 14 years. It makes no sense financially. And in terms of research and development, you would think that they would be trying to break these contracts at every level.
I would think they would have got started, like, with the Silk Road wallet. Because they still have control of that, right? The FBI does, I think.
Silk Road, man. Yeah. FBI seizes assets, and then those just become FBI assets. So who knows?
You think they still in Bitcoin, or you think they went back to fiat?
Like I said, I think Bitcoin accumulation and all that, I think, is something that our government is doing on the super under, right? Like, to me, that's what I firmly believe. I also believe that, anytime that you're going through any of these ports, right? Any port that leads to the internet, that's all traceable too. So I mean, I don't know, man. Like I said, the government and what they can do, what they should do, and what they are doing are all different things, right? So
gotta stay with some privacy coin. That's why I still have some privacy coin.
Do you think that it could ever be a thing that fiat is going to be backed by crypto versus, say, the petrodollar?
Well, that's what we were asking earlier. Would data outweigh the commodity of oil, and Wafer had a good point on that.
See, and I think honestly, nothing will replace energy, right? energy is the most scarce thing on our planet. When everyone says, "Oh, we should go green and we should, hug all the trees and ball," it's unrealistic. Even Elon Musk said there is no way that we can harvest enough energy to power everyone's electric car. It is an impossibility. There are not enough resources on the planet to even give everyone an electric car, right? When you look at some of the precious metals and like the cobalt and lithium and all of these harmful things that are also tied into that, it's like it's expensive. It's backed again by the oil industry. A lot of what we have in our hand, or what we wear on our backs and our feet, building materials, all made by petroleum, and these people are trying to completely get us away from it like a band-aid, which, I mean, that's what's causing a lot of the problems, right? If they lifted some of these regulations, inflation here in the United States would almost immediately go down.
Do you know what's funny is the lithium thing, like I've heard lots of people talk about it, hard rock mining, all that crappy stuff, environment. They're actually coming up with new methods. There's a plant actually up here in Canada, in Alberta, where I'm from. They're tapping into resources. So there's this big reservoir, it's called the Leduc Reservoir. And they're actually using a system where they're taking out this salt water or water out of the ground, and then they're processing it at the I forget what you call it, nanoparticle level, and they're actually extracting lithium at a pure content than you can get out of hard rock mining. So it's like 99% pure lithium they're mining out of this water. So they're putting it through the extractor, taking it out. The process takes about an hour, and they're able to pull out this lithium out of the water in large volumes. So I guess it comes down to how much water needs to be pushed through that thing in order for them to produce the same amount as one person mining a rock. It's not a lot.
That's what it comes down to, is economics.
It's not a lot. That's the thing. They're showing the volume that they need to do, and the other thing is the water that they're putting through it, they're putting back under the ground again. So when they're putting it back under the ground, then the water is going to be able to leach again that lithium that's in it and be able to take it out again. It's super impressive, like the idea behind it, and they're finding that there's more areas around the world that they can do the exact same thing, where there's minerals and stuff in the actual physical water that they can extract and use at a high quality and a high, like it's impressive actually.
See, and then that comes back to what are the but what are the damages that'll be done to the local ecosystem, right? Like lithium plays a big role in obviously water, right? It also plays a big role in some life out there, right? So I mean, if you're withdrawing all the lithium in a certain area, wouldn't that adversely affect the ecosystem around there? And again, that's where it's a slippery slope of how green can we actually be, right? Because if you're driving an electric car, I'm sorry, you're not green at all, right? Electricity, for one kilowatt of electricity, which is 4 light bulbs burning for an hour, it takes 25 gallons of water just to produce 1 kilowatt, right? It takes I forgot the poundage of air, but it's outrageous, like the conversions of this to that. And when you're driving around on multiple batteries, right? The batteries and battery acids are one of the worst things for the environment. If you ever tried to get a solar house, especially in the States, they make you do additional permitting for hazardous waste, because if batteries leak, you're actually destroying the environment even further than if you spilled some gas on the floor.
Yeah, that's why they're looking at, you're seeing a push here in Alberta. Like, we're one of the energy rich provinces, like oil, gas, all that stuff. But now you're seeing a push, like Syncrude and Suncor. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but they're actually pushing towards taking helium out of these big oil sand mines, and they're doing it off gas wells. They're doing it off different areas, which is absolutely interesting, because of course you know how helium works, and if they can harness it and use it for, or hydrogen, if they can use hydrogen for their processes, like for vehicles and stuff, they've been talking about it forever. But I don't know how easy it is to make a hydrogen powered vehicle. That's the only thing I kind of question.
So hydrogen, water powered and hydrogen powered cars have been around since the 70s. It's all about who owns the patent, right? Who wants the technology to get out and who benefits the most from it staying a mystery. So once you actually start looking into these electric cars and green energy style cars that have been around since the 60s, 70s, 80s, you'll start to find that they had a car powered by water in the 80s that would go 40, 50 miles to the gallon of water, right? Regular water. Wasn't a steam engine. I don't know how the guy did it, but it's been around for a while. Same thing with kinetic energy machines, right? Machines where you spin them and they just continue to make energy based on movement. So, I mean, there's tons of different machines and devices that have been invented over the years, but it's like, who controls them?
That's a 100 for sure. I know for sure the water carburetor was out. Like you said, it wasn't a steam engine either. The water carburetor came out I think it was like early 70s and towards the late 70s. I dug into that one day and I was like, holy shit, like we really already cars that run on water.
there is a documentary, Scott and Vibin, that you should watch. It's called Who Killed the Electric Car? And it actually dives in to technologies not only relating to kinetic energy, but saltwater engines, engines that relied, like I was saying, on kinetic energy, or different ways of creating the energy. Like some guy was using different kinds of juices, right? Like orange juice and these other acidic juices to create spark. So there's just some crazy stuff that people have invented that I don't think is seeing the light of day, because when you look at the oil economy, right, it runs the entire planet from top to bottom, from everything, what the ground's made of, from your asphalt all the way to the roofing on your house, to the rubber on your solar shoe. Everything is created by petrol.
Yeah, they're definitely not willing to give that power up, man. Well, and they still got another 50 years of it. So,
well, and that's what gets me, right? He who controls the energy controls the world. Like it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you can't heat your house, if you can't move your car, if you can't connect to the internet, you have no power. It doesn't matter how much money you have.
You'll be burning that money to stay warm.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, and there's even documentation over the years of these things happening where hyperinflation hits and people are burning stacks of money to stay warm.
It's crazy. Like, that's a perfect example in even Venezuela, for instance, where their money is worthless now. Or like Polly was saying, Libya or Saudi or any of those places. Libya is one of the best documented ones, where Clinton moved in and actually took all the gold reserve from there. There's emails that were leaked that prove that all happened. Like, it's insane.
Dude, she is the biggest criminal on the planet. She needs to be put away for life, forever. Like, she should never see the light of day.
Yep.
You think she's heartless?
I think people act for their best intentions in these cases, right? Hillary Clinton knows she can get away with it. Why wouldn't you do it? Right? If I can steal a bunch of gold and I know that my husband or someone I know in the government will run some sort of cover for me, why wouldn't I do it? That's like saying if you could rob a bank and you wouldn't get in trouble, would you do it?
I was about to say, they live like a modern day Italian job type of life.
I mean, it's a little deeper than that, right? Because they have ties in the government on every level, right? From the State Department all the way down, and then with her husband, she knew all of the predecessors to everyone that she was in. So it was like, I don't know. A lot of favors have been pushed around, and I'm sure a lot of payoffs has happened, and a lot of bodies have been stacked. So who knows?
And these are the same people we want to regulate our cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Dude, that's what blows my mind, is people can see the corruption. They understand there's corruption, yet they still vote for these same people. If that's not Stockholm Syndrome, I don't know what is.
So you think we're in favor of another party in the States, or you just think that corruption's too deep for the current generation?
I don't know, man. Like, I always told people, like, if I were to run for president, my initial thing would be to destroy lobbyists. Like, I would have it as a specific agenda to get rid of lobbying, just in general. It's disgusting. Like, if you're in a corporate structure, right? If you're in a Fortune 500 company, they make you take ethics courses, which means what you can and can't take from somebody, right? So, for instance, I was working at Comcast. Comcast said it's okay to go out to lunch with somebody if you pay for it, and maybe you get some business out of it. But it's not okay for that person to come to me and give me something in exchange for a discount, right? So that's what we see playing across the board in all the politics, right? Like they get their friends in and they play at a discount. Like they get all these little cool edges. They get breaks on things. They get, bills written in just for their friends. And we see it across the board, and especially with some of the current politicians sitting in power. Like it's so egregious that it is undefendable. And what's crazy is, people seem to turn a blind eye to it. I don't know what it is, but these guys in power, like the only way to really get rid of it would be to destroy lobbying, period.
And that's a catch-22 because they're the so-called people who provide employment for everyone, right?
I guess, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, for me, lobbying is like having two guys at a horse betting event go, hey, I want to bet $1 million, and so does this guy. But that guy, we're going to start his horse 20 or 30 feet behind, right? Like, it's just not equal. It's not fair, right? Because if you're in a lobbying party that's friends with one of these guys, you're in the front door automatically, right? So, I mean, you can't really say the government's for the people if they're acting in this way. Like, it's a pay-to-play scheme right now. Like, I have to pay to contribute to sit on the lobbying thing or be represented by a firm that does lobbying for X amount of dollars, right? And the whole thing from top to bottom just is, I don't know, to me it's so corrupt, it's outrageous. I don't even know how it's a profession.
Is it that bad where you are, Scott, right now?
Like when it comes to which, sorry?
The government, like the Canadian government.
I mean, it's all the same. It's like somebody said, and it was kind of funny when they did the picture of the politician, and they said, if politicians were like NASCARs, what would their coats look like? Like, it'd be insane.
They'd be checkered up. What's up, Pulley?
So I'll have to try and drag him in here one time. It's impossible to schedule with him sometimes, but I've hung out a lot with Joshua Deese of JP Deese and Associates. He goes by Crypto Lobbyist on Twitter, and he actually runs a cryptocurrency lobbying firm. And we followed his entire summer, basically, over my weekend of Twitter Spaces. Every Saturday, he would check in, and he was literally in some of the pictures where the Coinbase CEO was testifying in front of the Securities Exchange Commission. Joshua is in those pictures because he was in the room in the gallery listening. And the jobs that lobbyists do are so widely varied, and what you might think a lobbyist does versus what they actually do can be based on what your opinion of what their function is. So in an attempt to argue against Rick, because arguments are always a great conversation, I would tell you that lobbyists, although in some cases an evil, are a necessary evil, because the only way you can win a game where the cards are stacked against you is to cheat the way the dealer cheats. So, who is your lobbyist? Who are you paying? We talked last summer at great length about forming a what would be called a DeFi super PAC, and the necessity behind why filing as a super PAC is required in order to maintain anonymous donations above typical federal requirements, because a super PAC is exempt from things kind of like a corporation is its own entity. A super PAC is similar, so they're not bound by the same regulations. And what I can tell you is that we need enough money to come together to represent DeFi, and it's not going to come from the little shit coins and meme tokens that Joshua has been paid by in the past. And I love the tokens that he's worked with. I've helped him gain clients in the past. I helped some tokens find him and pay him, so he represented them in some of his videos. But what it's going to take is something much more than the tokens or the coins. It's going to take the exchanges. It's going to take Robinhood. It's going to take Coinbase. It's going to take everyone, BigONE, anyone who's got money to step up and really recognize that we've got to play the same game and buy the lobbyists that can make these people who aren't aware of what crypto are aware, because that's what lobbyists do. They slink up like they are poisoning the ear of these people, and they tell them what they need to hear about subjects they're undereducated on. So we need to put the people who know our stories in front of these people so that they come to understand things from what we would call, quote unquote, the right perspective, but which is in reality just our perspective. And that's my view on lobbyists in a positive way.
Yeah, and that takes us all the way back to what I said at the beginning, right? We have to pull these institutions and these people together in order to sit at the big table.
it'll definitely take a lot to do it. I mean, because it's just at the end of the day, man, it's just so hard to go against something, a machine that acts on their own power, right? And they can just print money out of thin air and give it value, make the value. Like the Luciman guy, he had a point. This is a good point. Even if the inflation goes up, they just print the amount of inflation, right? And if they pay it off before, they can pay it off before the inflation even rises, right? Or they can even print double. Like, so it's like it's kind of it's the government's definitely got us in a sling. And that kind of goes back to what Pulley was saying about what do we call value? What do we consider value, right? Like, because if all the people came together and we printed a fucking anything, right, and considered that the value, we could overtake, right? But it's so many ideologies. Like, we fight mental wars amongst every person and how everybody feels, that we forget that we are the power, like, together.
See, and one thing, Vibin, that I was thinking too is, so many people are into the idea of decentralization and the idea of DeFi, that I think it would be really hard even to get everyone in their best interest to unify, because the idea of being anonymous and non-centralization is so prevalent. I would even say it's to the point of sometimes toxic, like, because people talk about not wanting centralization, then they go on to talk about how a DAO might help that. But when you have a handful of people that can control the DAO, it's like you're back to the same situation. So I just see it as one of those things where, if we could unify, would they? Right? Like, that's what it really comes down to. Is the idea of being decentralization more important than mass adoption?
I'd agree. And the other thing too is, like, when it comes to decentralization, I find it interesting, and I'm not against what they're doing, is like these hacks with Axie Infinity, and then you have the Beanstalk hack where the governments are going in and being able to tell Tornado Cash, hey, we can't function with these wallets, sanction them, end them. And I think the decentralization people, some of them are like, what the hell, you're wrecking our way of doing things. But in the end, like, hey man, some of the legal stuff needs to be controlled as well. Or are we really helping ourselves when it comes to being a community or working together in the crypto space, if we allow these hackers to get away with these multi-million-dollar hacks, and it's turning out to be governments, like that North Korea hack with Axie Infinity? Like, not saying it's government, but if it's a North Korea based group, you have to believe they have some part in that.
One thing for certain, and two things for sure, is that even though, like, Tornado Pass isn't the first mixing protocol that doesn't have to, like, conform to government regulations.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear after that.
Prosciutto and crackers?
He was listing off all these Italian.
Oh, Wafer, your mic is on.
No, I muted it for him.
Oh.
But yeah, I was saying, like, the one thing about the shit, I forgot my train of thought.
Sorry, brother. I'm just going to give a heads up. 4 minutes left, and then we'll have to close the space. I got some stuff still to do today. I got a lot of meetings for some reason.
That's no worries. I'm on the timer, too. I appreciate you guys doing the space again. It was cool to hang out.
Always, man. Always.
Yes, thanks, Vivin. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate you guys. Good to see you again, Mr. Crypto Pulse.
Yo. You too, man.
And if you're in the room and you haven't been posted space, he has a space on Sunday. What is it?
Did I see the video? Did you see the video from my spaces that I shared about
did.
the stuff?
Cool, man. That shit looked really cool.
Yeah. I don't want to go off about it because I know we only got a couple minutes left, but that shit was cool.
Take it at the top.
Huh? Well, I don't know.
At the top. I see somebody walking around with their little laptop, like their little virtual avatar had like a little laptop and shit. It was so cool. How long did you guys stay in there, Pulley?
Let's see. We did the first half of my spaces, so like the first 45 minutes without the VR, but they were in the room, but just I was not because I needed my computer. So it was actually a 2-hour VR thing and a 2-hour Twitter Spaces, but I jumped into the VR after I finished, so I was in there for like the last hour of it.
Did anybody run into a wall or a TV during the recording?
They didn't say anything about it. I didn't hear anybody admit to having done it, at least. But if they did, it wouldn't surprise me. You guys must have disabled the ability to pin for speakers, because I can't pin to your space right now. So
I don't even know how I would do that.
I'm not sure either. I've never gone through the options and looked for that. It might be in the 3 dots up above or something like that. It's not a big deal with only a couple minutes left, but maybe I'll do it on Friday.
That's wild.
Yeah, the metaverse thing was fun, because here's what the best thing that came out of it was: we had one person who found us in the VR chat that had never heard of me, and then they followed me on Twitter, then they signed up and joined Twitter Spaces, then they took a speaker spot, and then they spoke in the Twitter Spaces. So we went full cycle with someone who came from VR and followed me and joined the Spaces and did a speaker spot and talked about finding me on VR, like live on the whole thing. It was pretty cool.
So what land were y'all in? You were in the sandbox, or which one?
No, that's the funny thing, and that's a very smart question of you to ask. I don't think, because I don't know a lot about those projects, is there a headset version of the Sandbox? Is that what Sandbox is?
Decentraland or Sandbox does not have a VR world yet.
Correct. So what I know about most metaverses is they talk about being metaverse projects, but what it is a two-dimensional on-the-screen game. It's not something that's an immersive experience. So what I was using was the Big Screen VR app, and that is a native app on the Meta Quest 2 headset. It might be on some other headsets too, but that's what I was using. So we were using a VR chat app that is a well-established, well-worn piece of software that's been out for years, and it has a huge community of active users where you can go and watch TV and rent movies and hang out in different rooms and theaters with your friends and have conversations, and there's all these active chat rooms that are open all day long. So what we did is we created our own that had the same title as my Twitter Spaces, and then we screen shared the Twitter Spaces onto the theater screen, so everyone that joins the room can watch and listen, because the Twitter Spaces is being played like a movie. So you didn't need Twitter or a phone to come to the Spaces. You could just join with your headset.
That's awesome.
That is super dope, man. Are you going to do another one, or is it just... Was that the start of it, or was that just a one and done?
No, we can do it again. It's kind of like a test run, but it's got everybody kind of thinking. What I'd like to do is I'd like to shove the video in Twitter's face and ask them why they don't have an app on this headset. But I think the answer is because they're kind of wrapped up in some other drama right now. I don't think that might be on their plate. I think Twitter's busy.
Dude, they're getting slammed right now too.
To show up with like software requests.
They're getting really slammed right now with the way that they're dealing with Elon Musk. Like, there's actually people saying, like, you guys are idiots, like, the way you're dealing with it all.
You broke up a little bit there, Scott.
Well,
yeah, but Twitter is getting wrecked.
We're at 11:01 anyways, you guys. I hate to say it, but we'll probably have to close the space for the day. We got a day ahead of us, Vibe, and we got that interview at 9 o'clock your time. And then on Monday, we are going to have I believe it's Monday, we're going to have a project in on here. I'm positive it's Monday. So we're going to have Metagin in here. Feel free to come in and ask some questions. I think it will be a great space. So,
all right, guys. Appreciate everybody coming in, Pulley away for. See you guys next time. Everybody listening, appreciate you guys being here. Scott, talk to you soon, brother.
Yeah, have a good day.
Peace.
Thanks, guys.